When I was a child, in order to trick my neighbor's sister into giving me money for Tet, I said that I wanted to marry her when I grew up. Later, we met again. She was sitting in my house, blushing and smiling. Would like to introduce myself to you. I am your lifelong fiancé when I was a child. Just after joining the company, I was pulled into the company's chat group and saw the beautiful female boss giving out red envelopes. As someone who can't pass up red envelopes, I quickly said, "Thank you, beautiful female boss. I love you all my life." After receiving the red envelope, I didn't forget to flatter her a little more. The colleagues in the office all looked at me with surprised eyes. I just smiled back. Since I was a child, I have been a social expert, so integrating into a new environment is not a problem. The whole office gave me a thumbs up. I bowed 90 degrees to thank them. Not long after I received the red envelope, the female boss added me as a friend on WeChat. To avoid embarrassment, I took the initiative to send a greeting sticker, but she didn't reply. I saw the other party is typing, but I didn't see any messages. Does she want to take back the red envelope? That's right, after all, I'm new to the company and I haven't made any achievements yet. I took the initiative to send back the red envelope, and the other party replied to me with 6 dots. She didn't accept the red envelope either. Looking at the red envelope that was not accepted, my heart was bleeding. I texted, "Boss, if you didn't come for the red envelope, can you give me back the red envelope?" The boss replied, "It will be automatically returned after 24 hours. Every word she sent was as cold as ice. Me, I think 24 hours is too long. The money is still safer in my wallet. Boss. In the end, the boss returned the red envelope to me. Although it was only 21.6 yuan, I was the luckiest one. My colleagues told me that the boss was on a business trip and would not be back for half a month, so I could take this opportunity to learn about the company and be prepared for the boss to come back and fire me. Because the boss is a very strict person and never supports freeloaders. I just graduated and am still an intern. After being officially hired, my salary after deducting insurance is 8,000 yuan a month. I don't want to lose such a good job. I study hard and don't forget to hunt for red envelopes in the chat group. Who wouldn't like a boss who gives out red envelopes all day long? The chat group, which was as quiet as a grave, suddenly became lively thanks to me, full of flattery to the boss. Me, the boss is so good, he gives out red envelopes every day. I love the boss so much. Me, I look forward to going to work every day, just to see the boss soon. Me, following the boss is the blessing of 10 lifetimes of cultivation. No need to worry about sleeping under the bridge anymore. Thank you, boss. I don't know if it's because I flatter the boss every day, but the boss regularly gives out red envelopes in the chat group. My new colleagues told me that the boss is like Zhou Baibi, a character who exploits people in Chinese literature. Before I came, everyone had to work overtime until late at night without getting a penny more. Give out red envelopes? Never seen it, never heard of it. While happily looking at the red envelope I just caught, the team leader rushed into the office and asked everyone to quickly finish the work they were doing and prepare for the meeting. Because the boss is back. I thought my female boss was a middle-aged woman with curly hair, a thick waist, and elephant legs. But the woman in front of me was tall and slender, wearing a high-waisted pencil skirt and red high heels, with a cold but charming temperament. I could smell the faint fragrance of her perfume from afar. Tut tut. With such a beautiful female boss, I can brag to my friends for a lifetime. I quickly took out my phone to take a sneak shot, but the click of the camera sounded like thunder in the office. The whole room was so quiet that I could hear the sound of a pin dropping. "Jiangmu, what are you doing?" The team leader shouted angrily. I quickly stood up. Because the boss is too beautiful, I just graduated and started working. It's the first time I've met such a beautiful leader. Of course I have to take a picture to show off to my friends. I dared to tell the truth. All my colleagues were silent, giving me thumbs up. Of course, some people pitied me. The female boss stroked her temples, curled her lips and glanced at me. Did she seem to be smiling? After the meeting, I was called to. I instantly became a celebrity within the company. Even the factory floor was abuzz with legends about me. After my boss returned, she stopped giving out red envelopes in the group chat and started sending them directly to me. The amount was always 50, accompanied by a message like, Xiao Jian, a cup of coffee, or Xiao Jian, transfer the file. This led me to believe my female boss was calling me every time I heard the red envelope notification. The WeChat conversations between me and my female boss were mostly, "Boss, I love you. Boss is so good. Boss, I will love you forever." I quite enjoyed this flattering life. After all, in just 1 month of starting the job, I had received 1 or 2,000 yuan just from red envelopes, and I no longer had to worry about cat food. In the second month of work, my mother called and asked me to come home for dinner. As soon as I opened the door, I was met with the beautiful face of my female boss, Jiang Shui. She was wearing a black pencil skirt, her hair curled, sitting on the sofa. My mother peeked out from the kitchen, saw me, and pushed me in front of Jiang Shui, proceeding to make introductions. Finally, she didn't forget to tell Jiang Shui that I had social awkwardness. Jiang Shui stroked her hair and looked at me with a smile. It turned out that Jiang Shui's grandmother and my grandmother were best friends, and we lived in the same neighborhood when we were young. Later, my parents moved to the city to earn money and took me with them. My mother said I used to play with Jiang Shui when I was young, but I don't remember. Anyway, she's so beautiful, if I had played with her, I would definitely remember. My mother must be lying. After the introductions, my mother went back to the kitchen to continue cooking. After chatting for a while, I learned that today was Jiang Shui's birthday. I glanced at my WeChat balance, so today I have to pay back all the red envelopes I hunted. I don't know if Jiang Shui saw through my thoughts, but she kept smiling at me. My colleague said she was stingy, and it turned out to be true. At the dinner table, my parents gave her a red envelope, but she refused. I took a gamble and transferred 888 yuan to her on WeChat. Anyway, she wouldn't accept it, so why be afraid? But when WeChat showed the message the other party has successfully received, I almost vomited blood. On the way back, Jiang Shui offered to drive me home. My parents were overjoyed, and I was overjoyed too. Who told her to accept my 888 yuan? I must take this ride. Do you remember who I am? Jiang Shui asked while driving. I was confused. She is the enemy who took my 888 yuan red envelope. Who else could she be? I silently complained. Jiang Shui glanced at me and said, "When you were young, you came back to your hometown for the new year and saw my family giving me a lot of red envelopes, and you were envious. So you kept pestering me, wanting me to give you red envelopes. You said you would marry me when you grew up, and you would love me forever, and a woman's money is for her husband to manage. Anyway, it will be yours sooner or later, so it doesn't matter whether you give it early or late, and then you swindled all my red envelope money. When you left, you held my hand, crying and telling me to hide all my red envelope money in the future and not to spend it. Because you will come back to find me." I held my chin with my hand, afraid it would dislocate. Did I do such a wicked thing when I was young? Why don't I remember anything? But Jiang Mu, where are you going? Are you lost? Jiang Shui's voice sounded again. I was still trying to search my memory, but I really couldn't remember. Jiang Mu, talk. Jiang Shui's voice sounded in my ear again. I looked at Jiang Shui who was driving and said tremblingly, "Is it possible that I'm not lost, but I just forgot?" After saying this, I hurriedly covered my mouth. Because I didn't intend to say it at all, I just thought about it in my heart. I looked at Jiang Shui. Sure enough, her face was as black as the bottom of a pot. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I didn't know that my unintentional actions when I was young caused such great harm to you. If I knew you would be my boss when I grew up, would definitely offer all my red envelope money to you. Lies, no way, money is my life. I don't know why, but I seemed to hear Jiang Shue's cold laughter. Jiang Shue silently drove me back to my rented apartment. To show my gratitude, I bowed 90 degrees. Thank you, boss, for taking me back. I will love you forever. Jiang Shue. She smirked. Do you say this often? She frowned. I choked up. I say it too much. It has become a catchphrase. I looked up and carefully observed Jiang Shue's expression. She frowned, her face as black as coal. Boss, why don't you come in and sit for a while? I pointed to the door with peeling paint. I knew I had social awkwardness, but it seemed my boss was the same. She took the key from my hand, opened the door, and stepped inside. When she touched the light switch on the wall, the old wires gave her a shock. I could feel the air around her freeze. Do you want to invite me in to sit, or do you want my life? Jiang Shue asked with a frown. I hurriedly turned on the light, and the furniture in the house appeared before my eyes. The old floor, the old table, the old sofa, the old wardrobe. Yes, I rented an old house. Who told this house to be cheap, only 500 yuan a month? I don't know if others are tempted, but I am. Although the furniture is old, I keep it very clean. There are fresh flowers on the tea table, a fish tank next to it, and a cute tabby cat. I love life. The company has paid your social security, and you have 8,000 yuan left. Where did all the money go? To rent such a shabby house? Jiang Shue was a little angry. I pouted. Of course I saved it. Except for the rent, you saved the rest. Why save so much money? Are you in debt? Loan sharks? Jiang Shue didn't understand. I shook my head. No, this money is saved to support my future wife. Then what about your red envelope money? Saved too? To support your future wife? She asked again. Yes. I answered. Jiang Shue was silent. I hurriedly covered my mouth. I don't know why, I always boasted before, mixing truth with lies, but when facing Jiang Shue, I could only tell the truth. Her face was as black as coal. She must have thought I had cheated all her red envelope money to support another woman. I felt like I must have offended Jiang Shue. Back at work, I was like a withered flower, sadly submitting my resignation letter. Social Security, 8,000 yuan salary, 2 days off on weekends, and even the boss's red envelopes, all have nothing to do with me anymore. As I was sinking into regret, a notification popped up on Jiang Shue's WeChat. She transferred me another 50 yuan. Jiang Shue, come to the office. No way, I have already resigned, and she still won't let me go? Does she want me to vomit all the money I cheated when I was young? She's too much. I was indignant, but my actions were very honest, and I immediately went to the general manager's office. Boss, you're looking for me. I put on the professional smile that I have used since childhood to flatter Jiang Shue. Jiang Shue didn't say a word and threw my resignation letter on the table. Why are you resigning? Is my salary not high enough? How much did the other party offer? I'll double it. Jiang Shue seemed very angry. The other party? I didn't understand. Jiang Shue frowned. Haven't you found a new job? I understand now. Jiang Shue misunderstood that I was poached by another company. There's no new job. I'm a fresh graduate. Who would want me? I'm not really self-deprecating, but as a fresh graduate who can find a job with weekends off, social security, and an 8,000 yuan salary, I'm already blessed after 10 lifetimes of cultivation. I don't know why, but I felt Jiang Shue getting even angrier. You haven't found a new job yet and you dare to resign, Jiang Mu, did you grow up on courage? Jiang Shui was so angry that she laughed. I shook my head. I've been listening to the song Brave Girl recently. Jiang Shui was really angry. Her face fell. You resigned to drink the northwest wind? Jiang Shui rubbed her forehead. Isn't that because she's too scary? Mentioning that I cheated all her red envelope money when I was young, isn't that implying that I should stay away from her? Thinking this, I said it all. I suspect I have a disease that only tells the truth when I meet Jiang Shui. Jiang Shui stared at me, not knowing what she was thinking. Salary increased to 10,000 yuan, weekends off and social security remain unchanged. Do you want to do it? She said. Heaven and earth. My ears were ringing. Is there such a good thing? So, I hurriedly flattered, do it. Boss tells me to go east, I dare not go west. I smiled. Earning more than 10,000 yuan as a fresh graduate, she's not my boss, she's my adoptive parents. Jiang Shui asked me to make coffee for her, then asked me to book a hotel for her, and even asked me to prepare clothes for her to attend a meeting. Could it be that I was promoted to her life assistant? However, not having to face those annoying files and not having to stare at the general manager, it's actually quite refreshing. In the evening, after working overtime, Jiang Shui personally drove me home that I originally intended to decline, but thinking that she had taken my 888 yuan red envelope, letting her be a free driver wouldn't be too much, right? Anyway, she wouldn't be driving me back every day. I happily returned home and hugged my tabby cat to share the joy of the day. Then, I picked up my phone again. Such happy news should naturally be shared with friends. Unexpectedly, as soon as I took out my phone, the power went out. I rent an old house, and power outages happen frequently. I know the way to the fuse box. It turned out to be a fire, and there were sparks. I hurriedly found a fire extinguisher, and with 2 sprays, the fire was extinguished. The joy of the day ended in a power outage. There was a knock on the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Jiang Shui. What's wrong? I opened the door. The room was pitch black. If it weren't for the sensor lights in the corridor, the whole world would be shrouded in darkness. Jiang Shui turned on the flashlight on her phone, walked around the house, and her eyes stopped at the fuse box and fire extinguisher. At this moment, her face was no different from a piece of ice. Her lips moved, and I guessed she wanted to scold me for renting such a shabby house, but she held back. Come to my house. Jiang Shui took a deep breath and said, It's not convenient for a man and a woman to live in the same room, is it? I said. Jiang Shui smirked. Yeah, it's quite convenient here at your place. If you're late for work tomorrow morning, I'll deduct your salary. Don't complain to me about being poor. Finally, she said. In the end, I succumbed to the boss's authority, took my clothes and tabby cat, and left with Jiang Shui. Jiang Shui lived in the city center, in the most bustling apartment complex. As soon as we entered the door, the smart housekeeper automatically turned on all the lights. Although my house is not as upscale as Jiang Shui's, it's not bad either. It's just that I'm stingy and chose an old house, which ended up being disastrous. Actually, I have been looking for a new house for a long time, but due to busy work and the difficulty of finding a house, it has been delayed. Entering Jiang Shui's house, she prepared a pair of men's slippers for me, and they fit perfectly. However, a woman like her having men's slippers in her house, could it mean that she has a boyfriend? Will your boyfriend mind? I stood at the door. I don't want to be considered a homewrecker. Jiang Shui laughed. Can't you see that the slippers are brand new? After saying that, she pulled me into another master bedroom. You'll sleep here from now on. From now on? Jiang Shui smiled. I don't want what happened today to happen again. You're my employee, and I have to be responsible for you. I looked around the room, a little embarrassed. Free of charge. She added. I knew it. God closes one door for you and opens another. I happily hugged Jiang Shui. That's great then, Jiang Shui. I love you to death. Jiang Shui looked at me, her eyes full of laughter. Damn it, this is my ancestor, I think I just blasphemed. Then I'll take a shower first. After saying that, I slipped into the room and closed the door. I can't be kicked out by Jiang Shui because of my impulsive actions. Raise, promotion, this is the most glorious moment of my life. I shared this joy with my friends. Jiang Shui still gave me red envelopes, 50 yuan each time. I happily accepted them, and I worked harder. I moved all my belongings to Jiang Shui's house and put them in my own room. She told me that I could use anything in the house at will, and that I didn't need to be polite with her. I nodded in agreement. I will use it, but I don't dare to use it casually. No matter how socially awkward I am, I don't dare to be so unrestrained. After officially moving all my belongings to Jiang Shui's house, I transferred 2,000 yuan to Jiang Shui. I can't be greedy for small advantages. Her house is so good, and she gave me a room to stay in. What if I resign one day and she turns against me? After transferring the money to Jiang Shui, I happily went to take a shower and came back to see several missed calls on my phone. I hurriedly stepped out of the room. Jiang Shui was standing at my door. Jiang Shui, what's wrong? I asked her. Jiang Shui showed me the transfer history. Why did you transfer money to me? I giggled and explained to her. Without saying a word, she picked up her phone and returned the money. I said free means free, you don't need to be polite with me. Jiang Shui said. But what if I resign one day? I asked. If I resign and she's unhappy and doesn't let me in, and we don't have a lease agreement, she throws my things away, and I have nowhere to sue. Jiang Shui put her hand to her forehead. I won't fire you, as long as you don't do what you did last time, saying you're quitting and then quitting, she said. Do you mean, as long as I want to work, I can work at your company forever? I asked. Jiang Shui nodded without saying a word. I smiled and took out my phone to record. Then leave some evidence, saying that I, Jiang Shui, allowed Jiang Mu to work at the company forever. Jiang Shui stiffened, her ears turning red. She took the phone and said the sentence just now, adding, and the house is also available for Jiang Mu to live in at will. This time it was my turn to blush. The atmosphere was a little awkward, and I hurriedly took the phone back. Okay, the evidence is there, then I'll go back to taking a shower. Jiang Shui nodded and saw me close the door. Lying in bed, I listened to the recording over and over again. Jiang Shui's voice is very nice, and the content is also very nice. A few days later, my mother came with a lot of local specialties. Seeing my mother at Jiang Shui's house, I was stunned. Mom, listen to my explanation, I'm renting Jiang Shui's house now, there's nothing between us. I trembled. Although I am socially awkward, I was born into a traditional family, and my parents are also traditional people. They would never allow me to do anything wrong. I was afraid my mother would call my father to break my legs. My mother glanced at me as if to say, "You're overthinking it." Jiang Shui told me a long time ago that she wanted to take you in to live here. The shabby house you rented wasn't enough to scare your mother, it almost scared Jiang Shui too. Aren't you afraid that the house will catch fire in the middle of the night and someone will die? My mother scolded me mercilessly. If I were a little weaker, I would commit suicide, but I am socially awkward. I have a fire extinguisher, I won't die. Jiang Shui and my mother were both speechless. My mother chose to talk to Jiang Shui all morning, as if Jiang Shui was her biological daughter. When my mother left, I pulled her back. Mom, don't tell me I have a half-sister. You don't have a sister, are you sick? Get out of my way. My mother left without even looking back. This woman is so heartless. Ever since Jiang Shui and I went to work and rode in the same car, there have been many rumors in the company. Basically saying that I'm a freeloader, a toad wanting to eat swan meat. I don't know whose mouth it came from, but by the time I found out, even the factory floor was full of rumors about me and Jiang Shui. That day, I went down to the staff office to get some documents, and even a newly acquainted colleague was gossiping about it with everyone. I sadly took the documents and went back. Jiang Shui asked me what was wrong, and I didn't say anything. After work that afternoon, I didn't wait for her and went home by myself. She called me, and I hung up. She sent me a message, and I replied, telling her that it was after work now, and if there was anything, we could talk about it tomorrow at work. After that, I didn't receive any more messages from Jiang Shui. The next day, I deliberately avoided her, and so did the next few days. Except for the times when I had to meet her, I was silent. Jiang Shui probably knew the reason why I was avoiding her, and she told her secretary to go down to the office and say, anyone who gossips behind their back will be fired. But it didn't work. What should be said was still said, just a little quieter. I gave Jiang Shui a cup of coffee and went out, and Jiang Shui called me back. Are you hiding from me? She asked. I didn't beat around the bush and said directly, I'm afraid of affecting your reputation. Jiang Shui stood up and walked up to me. What reputation do I have? I counted my fingers: cold CEO, arrogant goddess, charismatic sister. I didn't expect you guys to call me that behind my back. Do you call me that too? Jiang Shui asked me. I nodded. Of course, I have another name for you, God of Wealth. Jiang Shui pursed her lips and smiled. Jiang Shui's originally cold face suddenly bloomed into a smile. You're as greedy for money as ever. Leave the rumors to me, she said. I don't know why, but I nodded. The next day, I went to work. A colleague who used to be close to me came up to me. Jiang Mu, it turns out you're the boss's fiancé. I was drinking tea, and when I heard his words, I spat out a mouthful of tea. Who said that? The boss said it before work yesterday. Okay, I haven't been to work with Jiang Shui for the past 2 days. I really didn't know. I rushed to Jiang Shui's office and seeing her, I felt a little guilty. Jiang Shui, thank you for doing all this for me, but isn't this sacrificing your reputation? Jiang Shui stroked her hair and looked at me. Then you should treat me well in the future, as long as the two of us know the truth. Our parents are friends, and our grandmothers are best friends. With such a close relationship, how could I not help you, don't you think so? Jiang Shui's words moved me deeply. The most touching thing was that I could finally go to work with her. Taking the bus was really difficult and slow, and I had to get up an hour earlier every day. I will remember Jiang Shui's kindness to me in my heart, and I will never forget it. I specially bought a cookbook and dragged Jiang Shui to the market on the weekend. Choose whatever you want, this young master will cook today. Jiang Shui looked at me thoughtfully, walked around the market, and bought a lot of vegetables. When it came time to pay, I quickly took out the payment code and gave it to the vegetable vendor. I lost 300 yuan today. Although this wasn't the first time I cooked, I really didn't know how to cook. Jiang Shui hurriedly ran into the kitchen and saw the lid of the pot lying on the floor, so she pushed me out of the kitchen and sighed, telling me to sit still on the sofa. I wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. I clearly intended to cook, but I ended up cooking the kitchen. After Jiang Shui finished cooking, I tried my best to flatter her to lessen the embarrassment from before. Jiang Shui, your cooking skills are so good. Your future husband is so lucky. I feel happy on behalf of your future husband. She pursed her lips and listened to me brag. After showing off for a while, I felt embarrassed and fell silent. Of course, the task of washing dishes fell to me, otherwise, I really wouldn't know how to face Jiang Shui. My cat has been acting strange lately, meowing constantly, scratching doors, and peeing everywhere. When I came home from work with Jiang Shui, I saw that the cat had peed all over her bed. I'm sorry, I'll take care of it right away. I hurriedly went to change the bed sheet and duvet cover for Jiang Shui. The quilt couldn't be used anymore, so I had to throw it away, but Jiang Shui had no bed to sleep in tonight. Why don't you sleep with me tonight? I'm a gentleman, don't worry, I said to Jiang Shui. Jiang Shui remained silent. I went to catch my tabby cat. As long as you don't kill it, you can do anything you want with it. Jiang Shui pointed to Jin Dou's lower body and said, "Your cat is in heat." I glanced at it and hurriedly covered Jiang Shui's eyes. "Is this your first time raising a cat?" she asked. She ignored me and took Jin Dou from my arms and locked him in a cage, even turning on some soothing music for him. Haze. I sighed, "I'm sorry, it's my first time being a father, I'm still not used to it." "Yeah, this is the hardship of being a single father, you need to find him a mother like me," Jiang Shui said. My heart skipped a beat. "My cat is in heat, so should I get him neutered?" I asked with a smile to ease the embarrassment. I heard Jiang Shui's heart skip a beat too. She glared at me and ignored me. Jiang Shui said she would sleep on the sofa tonight, but Jin Dou was too noisy, I could hear him even in my room. I really wanted to go and neuter Jin Dou right now. In the middle of the night, Jiang Shui came to my room anyway, and I shared half of my blanket with her. She found some clothes and put them in the middle as a boundary. "How about we take Jin Dou to get neutered tomorrow?" I said. "We can't do it during the heat period." "Then wait until he's out of heat and get him neutered." Jiang Shui was silent for a moment and sighed in the dark. "Can you not neuter him?" Her voice was a little complaining. "Is this my son or your son?" I muttered. Jiang Shui didn't answer, she must be angry. "Then reluctantly let him be your son for a while, during the heat period, you are his mother." Humph. She chuckled softly. The next day, when I woke up, Jiang Shui was lying in my arms, and I was holding her tightly. I knew I was a lecher. I hurriedly sat up and pretended that nothing had happened. Jiang Shui sat up too. Because she was hugged by me today, she couldn't get up early, so we could only go out and buy breakfast. All day today, I kept thinking about my tabby cat. "Jiang Shui, do you think Jin Dou will be frustrated to death?" I suddenly asked. I rushed to Jiang Shui's office, and seeing her, I felt a little guilty. "Jiang Shui, thank you for doing all this for me, but isn't this sacrificing your reputation?" Jiang Shui stroked her hair and looked at me. "Then you should treat me well in the future, as long as the two of us know the truth. Our parents are friends, and our grandmothers are best friends, with such a close relationship. How could I not help you, don't you think so?" Jiang Shui's words moved me deeply. The most touching thing was that I could finally go to work with her. Taking the bus was really difficult and slow, and I had to get up an hour earlier every day. I will remember Jiang Shui's kindness to me in my heart, and I will never forget it. I specially bought a cookbook and dragged Jiang Shui to the market on the weekend. "Choose whatever you want, this young master will cook today." Jiang Shui looked at me thoughtfully, walked around the market, and bought a lot of vegetables. When it came time to pay, I quickly took out the payment code and gave it to the vegetable vendor. I lost 300 yuan today. Although this wasn't the first time I cooked, I really didn't know how to cook. Jiang Shui hurriedly ran into the kitchen and saw the lid of the pot lying on the floor, so she pushed me out of the kitchen. And sighed, telling me to sit still on the sofa. I wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. I clearly intended to cook, but I ended up cooking the kitchen. After Jiang Shui finished cooking, I tried my best to flatter her to lessen the embarrassment from before. "Jiang Shui, your cooking skills are so good. Your future husband is so lucky. I feel happy on behalf of your future husband." She pursed her lips and listened to me brag. After showing off for a while, I felt embarrassed and fell silent. Of course, the task of washing dishes fell to me, otherwise, I really wouldn't know how to face Jiang Shui. My cat has been acting strange lately, meowing constantly, scratching doors, and peeing everywhere. When I came home from work with Jiang Shui, I saw that the cat had peed all over her bed. I'm sorry, I'll take care of it right away. I hurriedly went to change the bed sheet and duvet cover for Jiang Shui. The quilt couldn't be used anymore, so I had to throw it away, but Jiang Shui had no bed to sleep in tonight. Why don't you sleep with me tonight? I'm a gentleman, don't worry. I said to Jiang Shui. Jiang Shui remained silent. I went to catch my tabby cat. As long as you don't kill it, you can do anything you want with it. Jiang Shui pointed to Jin Dou's lower body and said, Your cat is in heat. I glanced at it and hurriedly covered Jiang Shui's eyes. Is this your first time raising a cat? She asked. She ignored me and took Jin Dou from my arms and locked him in a cage, even turning on some soothing music for him. Haze. I sighed, I'm sorry, it's my first time being a father, I'm still not used to it. Yeah, this is the hardship of being a single father, you need to find him a mother like me. Jiang Shui said. My heart skipped a beat. My cat is in heat, so should I get him neutered? I asked with a smile to ease the embarrassment. I heard Jiang Shui's heart skip a beat too. She glared at me and ignored me. Jiang Shui said she would sleep on the sofa tonight, but Jin Dou was too noisy, I could hear him even in my room. I really wanted to go and neuter Jin Dou right now. In the middle of the night, Jiang Shui came to my room anyway, and I shared half of my blanket with her. She found some clothes and put them in the middle as a boundary. How about we take Jin Dou to get neutered tomorrow? I said. We can't do it during the heat period. Then wait until he's out of heat and get him neutered. Jiang Shui was silent for a moment and sighed in the dark. Can you not neuter him? Her voice was a little complaining. Is this my son or your son? I muttered. Jiang Shui didn't answer, she must be angry. Then reluctantly let him be your son for a while, during the heat period, you are his mother. Humph. She chuckled softly. The next day, when I woke up, Jiang Shui was lying in my arms, and I was holding her tightly. I knew I was a lecher. I hurriedly sat up and pretended that nothing had happened. Jiang Shui sat up too. Because she was hugged by me today, she couldn't get up early, so we could only go out and buy breakfast. All day today, I kept thinking about my tabby cat. Jiang Shui, do you think Jin Dou will be frustrated to death? I suddenly asked. Jiang Shui, who was holding a cup of coffee, her hand trembled. Not really. How would you know, you're not a cat? Jiang Shui looked at me thoughtfully, you're a man, don't you know? Me. At noon, I was dragged away by Jiang Shui. I thought she suddenly had a contract that needed to be signed, but it turned out to be her sister's house. Her sister has 3 cats, one of which is also a tabby cat, a female. Brother-in-law, Dian Dian, is timid, but she doesn't scratch people, so don't worry about raising her. Brother-in-law? Jiang Shui's sister was surprised. Jiang Shui hasn't pursued you yet? I shrugged and explained that we were just superior and subordinate. She smiled and didn't say anything else. Jiang Shui and I hurriedly took the bride home. Jin Dou is really a lecher. As soon as he saw Dian Dian, he stuck to her. Jiang Shui, look, it seems like they're about to consummate their marriage. I exclaimed in surprise. Jiang Shui's face turned red. She suddenly ran into the room. I thought she was feeling uncomfortable somewhere, so I followed her. Are you okay? Why is your face so red? I asked. Jiang Shui looked at me and suddenly reached out and hugged me. Outside, the cats were meowing endlessly, and her heart was also beating endlessly. Next time, don't watch people make love anymore. She said. I nodded and asked on impulse, Jiang Shui, do you like me? I'm not really that bold, but the words of Jiang Shui's sister today had left my heart hanging all day. And I'm the kind of person who doesn't cry until they see the coffin. Who knew that I would fall for her the first time I met her? I'm a socially awkward person, but I have a mouth, and I can talk better than others, so what if I fail the challenge? Jiang Shui looked at me and sighed helplessly. You know, and you still ask, aren't you afraid that Afraid of you what? I pressed. Jiang Shui stood on tiptoe and kissed me. My first kiss, I almost suffocated. Jiang Shui probably noticed my awkwardness and let go of me. I was like a drowning person who had just come ashore, gasping for air, but my heart was like a deer running wild. So, you're not afraid of me, me. I was so nervous that I stuttered. Jiang Shui heard my heartbeat and laughed, no, as long as you take responsibility. My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. Sure enough, I couldn't resist beauty. As for wanting to push down Jiang Shui, I had that thought since the first time I saw her. What I didn't expect was that I actually dared to do it. The next morning, we sat at the dining table, staring at each other. Your mother. I'll tell her that I took the initiative, I'm sorry. I wanted to go back to last night and slap myself. I actually dared to push down my god of wealth, I'm so bold. So when are we going to register our marriage, and the wedding date, when do you want to set it? Jiang Shui asked me with an expectant look on her face. Huh? So soon. Can I really marry my beautiful female boss home? I never dared to think about it. Besides, register our marriage? Wedding? Too fast. Jiang Shui's face turned pale. Is it because my technique is not good? Are you not satisfied? I can learn, I'm not very familiar with it the first time, it will be better in the future. My heart felt like it was being electrocuted. Damn it, is this something I can hear without spending money? At this moment, I heard the meows of Jin Do and Dian Dian again, even in broad daylight, they were so unrestrained. Jiang Shui and I lowered our heads to eat. My mind was full of what happened last night. This superior-subordinate relationship had finally changed. Without flowers, without wine, we confirmed our relationship amidst the meows of Jin Do and Dian Dian. Jiang Shui insisted on taking me to meet my parents, even though I had met them before. My mother happily cooked a table full of delicious food, and my father took out a bottle of precious wine that he had kept for many years. At the dinner table, my father told Jiang Shui to stay, and my mother also said not to go home tonight, she would clean up the living room later. So my father and I clinked glasses continuously. You two drink first, I'll go clean up the living room. After 3 rounds of drinking, my mother stood up. Mom, don't bother, Jiang Shui can sleep with me. I said. As soon as I said it, I regretted it. My mother was stunned, my father jumped up. Jiang Shui was still pouring wine for my father. My mother and father looked at each other, I don't know what kind of tacit understanding they had. I just saw my father take a large bowl, fill it with wine, and bring it to me. Our family has a rule, you can't bully other people's daughters before marriage. Mr. Jiang is not here today, so I'll drink with you on his behalf. My father said. Then, he looked at Jiang Shui with a kind face and said, Daughter, don't worry, if you marry my son today, you are my own daughter. I looked at the bowl full of white wine that my father brought over. How could he bully such an honest person? My mother didn't go to clean up the living room either. She reached out and pinched my waist, blaming me and Jiang Shui for progressing too fast. I got my father drunk, and finally, my mother left me to Jiang Shui. Jiang Shui helped me into the room. She was about to unbutton my shirt to wipe me down when I sat up. You're not drunk? Jiang Shui asked. I shook my head, just not as drunk as my father. She looked at me and chuckled. Your family is really traditional. Jiang Shui also wanted to take me to meet her parents. She said her father was a retired soldier and her mother was a teacher who had just retired. I had never been so nervous. I am a socially awkward person. How could I be nervous? Should I call your parents uncle and aunt, or uncle and auntie? They'll probably prefer it if you call them mom and dad. Jiang Shui whispered in my ear. Her warm breath made my face blush, and the door suddenly opened. Seeing me, Jiang Shui's mother hurriedly pulled me into the house. As a socially awkward person, this was the first time in my life that I sat still so obediently. Seeing me like this, Jiang Shui pursed her lips and couldn't stop smiling. Jiang Mu, this child has an extraordinary appearance. It really makes me like him so much. My daughter has always been cold. If she bullies you, just tell us, we will help you. I hurriedly shook my head. She is a girl, it is only right for me to give in to her. When we left, Jiang Shui's parents even gave me a red envelope. They said it was a meeting gift and told me not to be polite. How could I be polite? Thank you, Dad, thank you, Mom, from now on we are a family, no need to be polite, yours is mine and Jiang Shui's, and ours is yours. After receiving the red envelope, I immediately flattered. Just now I was a shy puppy, now I can talk better than the village gossip. I watched helplessly as Jiang Shui's parents looked at each other silently. Each of them took out a bank card from their pockets. Good boy, you are so cute. I told Jiang Shui to go find you earlier. My mother's decision about this marriage was really right. Ha ha ha. Me? Although I had 2 more bank cards in my hand, I was still confused. Sitting in the car on the way home with Jiang Shui, I put the bank cards in my pocket. What did your mother mean by the marriage? Jiang Shui then told me about the marriage arrangement. This engagement was arranged by my grandmother and Jiang Shui's grandmother, saying that if each of them gave birth to a boy and a girl, they would become in-laws. But my father's generation were all boys, so after the 2 grandmothers passed away, they still had this matter on their minds. When I was young, I went back to my hometown to meet Jiang Shui, and my words, "I will marry you when I grow up," were not lies. I heard it from my parents. I was afraid you would think I was approaching you because of what happened in the past, so I didn't dare tell you. Jiang Shui said. I laughed heartily. How could that be? I just sighed at how wonderful fate is. Back home, Jiang Shui took out a slightly old piggy bank and gave me a hammer to break it. I opened it, saw what was inside, and my eyes lit up. Red envelopes. Red envelopes. All red envelopes. These are all yours, you told me to keep them all and give them to you when you grow up. Jiang Shui said as she arranged the red envelopes. How could she be cold? She's obviously very obedient. Seeing so much money, I reached out and hugged her tightly, and quietly stuffed the bank cards into her hand. From now on, you are my wife, these are all yours. Jiang Shui didn't say a word and stuffed them all back into my hand. Yours is yours, these are all your private money, but the wife's capital, you saved, remember to give it to me, that's what you prepared for your future wife. She said with a smile. I nodded repeatedly. Jiang Shui and I got married. Whether it was the relatives of the bride's family or the groom's family, they were all full of praise for me. When they gave money, they smiled and stuffed red envelopes into my hand, without any hesitation. At the wedding, after her father gave Jiang Shui's hand to me, he disappeared. Later, I heard from my mother that he hid in the bathroom and cried. So after we got married, we bought a house, right across from my parents' house. When Jiang Shui came home for the holidays, it was both going back to her husband's house and going back to her parents' house. In the 3rd month after marrying Jiang Shui, she got pregnant. After discussing with both families, she started staying at home to raise the baby. I took over the work at the company, and she was responsible for managing the finances. Today she sleeps at her husband's house, tomorrow she sleeps at her parents' house. After the baby was born, Today Jiang Shui's mother took care of her postpartum. Tomorrow my mother took care of her postpartum. There was no conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and no family quarrels. Nothing. I am socially awkward and also good at talking. Any conflict can be resolved smoothly under my 3-inch tongue. Jin Do and Dian Dian gave birth to 4 kittens, 2 big tabby cats leading 4 little tabby cats running around. When my son was born, the kittens lay on my son and suckled. Late at night, I was working. Jiang Shui suddenly transferred 50 yuan to me and said, "Husband, do you want to have a second child?" Thinking of my beautiful wife, I quietly turned off the computer.